Today is Saturday, February 22nd. This Monday will mark 3 years since Russia's all-out assault on Ukraine. And now America's role seems to be changing as President Trump spars with Ukraine's leader and opens more dialogue with Russia. Today, an expert on the region will give her take on President Trump's latest actions. Christina Hook is an assistant professor of conflict management at Kennesaw State University and a specialist in Ukraine and Russia. She's currently working on a book about this conflict and its history over the last decade. In the past, she's also served as a U.S. Department of State policy advisor. And today, she'll share insights on not only Trump's moves, but also Russia's behavior, Ukraine's hopes for the future, and what a possible end to this war could look like. Welcome to the Newsworthy Special Edition Saturday, when we sit down with a different expert or celebrity every Saturday to talk about something in the news. Don't forget to tune in every Monday through Friday for our regular episodes, where we provide all the day's news in 10 minutes. I'm Erica Mandy. It's now time for today's Special Edition Saturday. Christina Hook, thank you so much for joining us here on the Newsworthy.
It's my pleasure.
A lot has happened with the Russia-Ukraine war this week, including the Trump administration negotiating directly with Russia without Ukraine. So what's your overview on why this approach is happening and its potential impacts?
We do want to focus on the specifics of the now, but we also have to take a step back and say, where are we and where have we been? So this is an 11-year war at this point, and I began conducting research on this war in 2015, 1 year into it.
Talk us through why you're saying that.
So this war began when Russia unilaterally invaded Crimea, which is a southern peninsula in Ukraine. At the same time, they also began to spark warfare in two of the eastern provinces of Ukraine. This is a big area. It's actually bigger than Denmark or the Netherlands. The war escalated in 2022, and by escalated, it meant invasion on almost every side of Ukraine from both the country of Belarus and from Russia proper. But it was also a campaign of genocidal mass atrocities, so executions, mass graves, sexual violence, the kidnapping of children and adults. And all of this is really important context when we figure out where the Ukrainian people are, where the Ukrainian leadership is, because the trust is just so low. It's very popular in the narratives to say, is this a peace talks? But if one of the parties, especially the party that was aggrieved, is not there, it might be more precise to use other terms. Is this a dialogue? Is this a strategic dialogue? Is this a call for a ceasefire? But it's not yet clear if this is something that we might precisely call peace talks.
Yeah, because Ukraine has already said this isn't legitimate without us.
And I think that that's fair. This was the first time since Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler that a sovereign country had been invaded. I haven't yet seen evidence that the U.S. can shape Russia's behavior. I was looking for any type of announcement by the U.S. government or acknowledgement by the Russian government that they would stop bombing the civilian population of Ukraine, let's say even for 1 hour during the meeting that was held in Saudi Arabia between the U.S. and Russia. The bombing continued during that 1 hour. That night, it was followed up with attacks on Ukraine's capital city, on another major city, Odessa. And we had Russian public denials stated by the foreign minister that they were doing that they had ever, in his words, that they had ever bombed the civilian population of Ukraine. And so if we want to talk about moving towards a reduction of violence or peace, I would welcome that. But if we're still struggling to get Russia to stop bombing for even 1 hour when the world's eye is on them, there are questions about what they would do when the news cycle moves on.
President Trump recently indicated that Ukraine started it. What was your take on that?
That's probably more emotion than facts. I praise the first Trump administration for what I called rhetorical courage in calling this a state-to-state conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So to see him change his mind so quickly, it was surprising. Another thing that surprised me is I went back to 2022 and I noticed that President Trump said that, in his words, this was a genocide. So he seems to have changed his position a lot. We do have the most documented war in history. We have, all of the CCTV footage of everything from Russian soldiers kidnapping children to Russian tanks crossing the border. So it's unclear what's motivating that kind of language, and it's really not grounded in any kind of facts that we can hold on to.
President Trump also called Ukraine's president a, quote, dictator without elections. Can you explain what's behind that?
Because there would be a lot of people unable to participate, and because they would have to violate their own constitution, which prevents and forbids elections under martial law, there's the sense that having elections now would destabilize the country. And this is something that I actually directly asked Ukrainian opposition politicians, is there any appetite in the country for elections? And they said that we have to protect our people and we have to preserve our state. Doing that means we have to follow our constitution. And so we will talk about this after the war is over.
Is there a sense at all from Ukrainians, maybe it is time for something different? Is there any sort of optimism with what the Trump administration is doing?
There was a hope in Ukraine that things would be different. And what many people there feel is that this has been 11 years of aggression and that it is in the context of terrible, terrible suppression under Moscow in the past. I think that the hope in Ukraine is that the Trump administration will be more bold in what he might be willing to provide the people of Ukraine to defend themselves. So I think that they were looking for change from the Biden administration policies, but hoping for a change in more boldness on their side and perhaps not the type of rhetoric that we've seen this week.
You've mentioned a lot of the brutality of this war. Are you concerned at all that it's not breaking through to mainstream media in America as much as it did at the start of the war?
I am. What we've seen as we've tracked this is as media attention has gone down, Russian atrocities have gone up.
Still ahead, we discuss who exactly is at the table in these latest talks about Ukraine, what a potential end to the conflict might look like, and whether America's involvement in this war could align with Trump's America First motto. But first, a quick break for our sponsors. When I wear anything from Honeylove, I can instantly tell so much thought went into every aspect of what I'm wearing, from the feel to the function to the fashion. So it came as no surprise for me to learn that Honeylove is an independent, female-founded brand that is intelligently designed by women who actually wear the products. Honeylove shapewear, for example, it's designed to move with you, so no more pulling it down or up anytime you walk around. I also love the designs and the fabric of Honeylove shapewear. It in some ways feels like part of a great outfit that makes me look and feel better instead of something that I need to hide or be embarrassed about. And if you've been listening for a while, then you also know that I adore Honeylove's Legging 2.0, my favorite legging for everyday wear, hands down. So treat yourself to the best bras, shapewear, and leggings on the market. Save 20% off Honeylove at honeylove.com/newsworthy. Use our exclusive link to get 20% off. honeylove.com/newsworthy to find your perfect fit. After your purchase, they ask you where you heard about them, so please support our show and tell them we sent you. Elevate your comfort, elevate your style with Honeylove. The Newsworthy is also brought to you by Ancient Nutrition. The human body is an amazing thing. It can repair and grow in ways that are still pushing the limits of what science can explain, even in 2025. At the same time, as you age, your body's natural healing and building processes slow down. I've already felt a difference myself. And while it's totally normal, that doesn't mean there's nothing we can do about it. A collagen supplement from Ancient Nutrition can help. Ancient Nutrition's mission is to create high-quality supplements that combine the best of ancient wisdom and modern science. Ancient Nutrition's multi-collagen advanced lean supplement contains 10 types of collagen from 10 real food-based sources. This formula is powered by clinically studied ingredients that promote fat loss and healthy weight management. Collagen can also reduce joint discomfort and improve the look and growth of your skin, hair, and nails. And it's really simple to use. I've been scooping some into my morning coffee or smoothie, and that's all it takes to get the benefits. Right now, Ancient Nutrition is offering 25% off your first order when you go to ancientnutrition.com/newsworthy. That's ancientnutrition.com/newsworthy for 25% off your first order. ancientnutrition.com/newsworthy. Okay, now back to our conversation. Trump has said he wants Ukraine to contribute hundreds of billions of dollars to a reconstruction fund and to give the U.S. mineral and gas rights in the country. What's your take on it, and is it realistic?
The idea for joint partnerships around things like mineral rights and for U.S. investment in Ukraine was actually an idea and an initiative of Ukraine. So last year, there was something called the 10-point peace plan, or sometimes in the press called Zelensky's peace plan. And it's a public open document that people can Google. And part of that was about calling for and welcoming U.S. investment in things like the extraction of rare minerals in Ukraine. And so I know on the Ukrainian side that there's still this hope for U.S. investment investment. They feel that, opening their country for that type of business investment should come hand in hand with some type of future-oriented language from the United States about security guarantees.
And that's not necessarily happening.
The U.S. administration appears to be using language of payback, and that's unclear for many observers what that means.
Do you have a sense of how Russians are feeling about all of this?
Russia is a dictatorship, and so there's always a question about how accurate public polling is. There has been significant anecdotal evidence that there has been resistance within the Russian Federation. The degree of that is something that we will probably be trying to figure out for many years to come.
When we're talking about the dialogue or the negotiations or whatever word is being used, I know Steve Witkoff has been a key player. He was appointed a Middle East envoy, but it seems he's going beyond the Middle East at this point. What do you know about him and his ability to impact what's happening with this war?
The players on the Russian side are individuals with deep, deep experience working with the U.S. But there is a question of whether the U.S. is bringing people with similar deep expertise. Do they speak the Russian language? Do they speak the Ukrainian language? Do they know the history of these two countries? And the ways that that might need to factor into what Russia is ultimately after. It's harder and harder to sustain the idea that they're just after some small destroyed towns in eastern Ukraine or in the south of Ukraine. Most of us who are watching the detail of this believe that their desires expressed in their own words is to go deeper into the areas where Moscow has historically been the imperial or the colonial controller. And these also include NATO countries. And I think that it would be very helpful for the Trump administration to have people who are tracking that type of detail and that type of historical context in those rooms.
Based on that, do you think there's any sort of compromise that could be considered victory for both sides or something that could actually bring this war to an end over the next year?
What would be the cost of giving Russia a victory? Because if we give Russia anything that they can call victory to the world, then they are going to have presented a formula to every dictator in the world that a war of international aggression characterized by horrendous mass atrocities is a winning formula. And I think that it is in the interest of the United States and the interest of every country in the world to say that no, that this is not a winning formula.
What would a successful conclusion look like to you?
I keep thinking back to the kind of Ronald Reagan era as I thought about how I've seen the Trump administration's own dialogue on Russia change from what they used to call Russian aggression in 2018 to today. And I keep remembering how they asked Ronald Reagan what his strategy was in the Cold War. And he said, "My strategy, we win, they lose." And I do think that that is something that worked for the U.S. in the past, and that actually hasn't been tried yet vis-a-vis Russia. Russia is not the Soviet Union. It's much weaker, and it has shown a consistent pattern throughout the last 3 years that when they are hit hard, they back down. And we actually haven't tried that either in the Biden administration or in the Trump administration. And so I would say that that would be the winning formula, and I think it's high time that we try it.
Are you referring to the U.S. doing it directly or supplying Ukraine with what it needs to do that?
I think that President Trump has a tremendous amount of economic tools at his disposal. And so I think that the U.S. should pursue a policy of strengthening those economic sanctions while also giving Ukraine the tools that it actually needs to get this done. Ukraine has maintained its confidence in their own ability to win. They have a very large army, the largest army in Europe, and they believe in their ability to win, and they've shown a lot of skill in driving the Russians back when properly equipped. And so I think that combination of U.S. economic pressure and tools to Ukraine from both the U.S. and from other partners of Ukraine would be the winning formula. And I think that the window is still open for pursuing it.
What would you say to an American who believes in that America First ideology, who says we have our own issues, we can't be spending money and time overseas?
I think that Ukraine has offered our country an opportunity to pursue that policy. So they've never asked for any U.S. soldiers. And they've also just asked for weapons that would be produced in American factories, even accepting older weapons from us that we actually spend millions and millions of dollars every year to destroy weapons that have expired. And so I think that there is a way where this would revive both the U.S. production of the type of weapons that we will need for our deterrence posture towards Asia. And I think that it's a way that would stimulate the state budgets of many, many U.S. states that host these kind of factories. And I think that we could do that while also preserving our reputation that has served us so well since World War II, that freedom matters to us, that democracy matters to us, that standing up against bullies is part of our American heritage. And I think that this is a sort of winning formula for continued bipartisan consensus, including people that you've described as America First.
Well, thank you so much to Christina Hook for sharing her expertise on the region. She's interviewed more than 100 firsthand witnesses for her forthcoming book on the Ukraine-Russia conflict, with more details to come about that book. Join us again on Monday when we'll catch you up on the news you need to know in just about 10 minutes. Until then, have a great rest of your weekend.